My name is Ember, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I play The Sims 4. I'm really excited to share this build with you all today because I built a Victorian house based on the asexual pride flag and the colors of the asexual pride flag. So I was thinking, the colors are black, gray, purple, and white. And I feel like that it reminds me of the Vampires pack, and it reminds me of like emo kids, and maybe some vampires. And so I thought it'd be fun to build like a Victorian house based on these colors. I found a reference picture of a house that I thought was perfect. It was a little hard to find the right color for the exterior in the game because there really isn't a lot of purple things in The Sims 4. And if there is, it's often not tagged as purple for some reason. I noticed that a lot. When I would, have the purple filter on, it would miss a lot of stuff. But I ended up using just purple paint on the outside, even though that's not necessarily meant to be on the outside of the house, but I think it worked the best of all of the options. And yeah, I think it turned out really well. And then I made the roof black. I included gray and white as trims and on the windows. And yeah, I think I really captured the colors of the Ace Pride flag. And of course I put one on the front of the house, front and center when you look at it. And this house is of course in Forgotten Hollow, the vampire world that came with the vampire pack. Because, I wanted to make some asexual vampires. So I did. That video will be coming soon of the 4 Sims that I created to live in this house, 2 of whom are vampires and all of whom are asexual or on the ace spectrum. So initially, I was so sure that there was a demisexual pride flag in the game. I was sure there was. So I was planning to, maybe make a separate demisexual house and a separate asexual house, and I, of course they would use similar colors, but I was like, oh, I'm sure I can find some way to differentiate. And then I go into the game and I'm like, where's the demisexual pride flag? Apparently there isn't one. I was so sure that there was. But, so I decided, well, I can just combine them together. This is, the asexual pride flag, but asexual can also be an umbrella. It can include people who are demisexual and gray ace, and there's a lot of things in between. So this is a house for, asexual people, demisexual people, gray ace, anyone on the ace spectrum. And so my Sims are also going to reflect that, and some of them are demisexual or gray sexual. So this is the second pride flag that I've done in this build challenge that I've made for myself. Basically, I'm planning to build a house and create some Sims based on the color scheme of every pride flag in the game, more or less. I may combine some of them, or there's 3 lesbian pride flags. I'm probably not going to do a separate one for all 3. So yeah, after I did the gay pride flag, with all the rainbow colors, I thought that the asexual pride flag would be a really fun one to start with next. And I'm thinking after this, maybe I'll go for the trans pride flag because, I feel like I could make a really nice pastel house. And of course, all of my Sims that I create for these, they're not just one thing. Whenever I play The Sims, basically all of my Sims end up being trans and gay, and that's not going to stop for this. So a lot of my Sims are going to be, ace and trans and gay and all these different things. And yeah, so it's really exciting to me to create that diversity that doesn't really exist in the game and to tell these stories. And I'm really looking forward to playing with these Sims and having them in my saves. And also their really cool looking houses and with all their pride flags out front. So in this series, which I'll link to the playlist at the end of this video, but you can also find it on my channel, the Pride Flag Build Series playlist, if you want to watch other ones. But in this series, I'm not only sharing these houses with y'all and the Sims I create, but I'm also giving recommendations for YouTubers that share those identities that I really like and that I, suggest for other people to watch. So in this video, I'll be giving some recommendations for asexual or ace spectrum YouTubers that I personally enjoy and that I would recommend for you to watch, if you want to hear more from ace YouTubers. I also want to talk a little bit about this build and about all the rooms that I've made and who they're made for, which Sims I had in mind. So I will intersperse talking about the build with giving my recommendation. And I will link all of these YouTube channels that I recommend down below in the description so that you can go check them out. So my original plan was that I was going to put out, each week of Pride Month in June, I was going to put out a build and some Sims, a video about them, for each of the different Pride flags, and try to get 4 Pride flags done during Pride Month. So I've realized, that's a little bit overly optimistic. Like, building this house took me about 10 hours total. And then, of course, I had to edit the video together, and I have to record the voiceover, and I have to prepare the video and upload it. So, that's kind of a lot of time. And then I also have to make the Sims as well. So I'm not going to push myself to, try to do one every week. I'm just going to put them out as I have time and as I'm able to. And also, it's complicated by the fact that in a few days, I'm going to have to go to my parents' house. I have to go to my cousin's wedding, unfortunately. I'm not a fan of, allo cishet weddings, but I have to go. And so I'll be staying at my parents' house for a few days, and I'm not out to them. It's not, safe for me to be out to them. So I feel like recording these videos there is not a good idea. I probably will still play The Sims and maybe record some, less heavily, obviously queer-focused stuff. But yeah, so if I do end up making builds, there might be less voiceovers because, again, I don't know how safe I'll feel recording voiceovers being hi, I'm non-binary, I'm queer, when I'm at my parents' house where I'm not out to them. So there might be less voiceovers, maybe more music, or maybe just less videos in general. We'll see. But, I do love playing The Sims, so I probably will continue playing. I always have a problem where, my parents will ask, oh, what are you playing? And I'm like, oh, The Sims. And then they want to see what I'm doing, and I'm like, do I have anything I can show them that will not out me? Because, like I said, all of my Sims are trans and gay, and I like to put pride flags in my builds, But yeah, hopefully it won't be too bad. And afterwards, I'll be able to start recording videos the same again and put out more of these Pride Flag series builds and Sims because I've really been enjoying it. Okay, so while I'm working on the kitchen, I'm going to share my first asexual YouTuber recommendation. So my first recommendation is actually demisexual, and his name is Evan Edinger, and I've been watching him for a really long time actually, and Evan was the first person that I heard about demisexuality or even asexuality from, and it really had a really big impact on me because at the time, I'd never really heard about that, and he made a video in 2015 coming out as demisexual and explaining what that meant, and at the time I was like, that sounds like me. I had started to realize that I did not experience, sexual attraction in the way that other people did, but I didn't know that, there was a word for it or there was a way to explain it. And so I was following Evan and I watched his video and it, kind of changed a whole lot for me. And I started identifying as demisexual. I didn't really tell anyone about it, but I started to think about it within myself and think about, what does that mean that I experience things in a different way from other people? And now I eventually did come to realize that I'm actually asexual, I'm not demisexual, because I really didn't understand what sexual attraction was at all. So once I started to understand, people, this is what people mean when they say they're attracted to someone, I was like, oh yeah, I don't have that at all. But still, it was really important to me to, hear about demisexuality. And I think it's often overlooked, or, we don't always do the best of being supportive of demisexual people. And so, yeah, I love that Evan has talked about being demisexual. He's made a few update videos that discuss his demisexuality. So yeah, I would recommend his channel, even though it's not heavily focused on ace topics or on demisexuality. He does talk about it occasionally, and he had a really big impact on me by introducing me to the term demisexual. Which, if you don't know, being demisexual is when you only have sexual attraction to people once you've established an emotional connection with them, and that's the only way it can happen. You're not gonna just develop sexual attraction without that emotional connection. And it's part of the ACE umbrella but it's a more specific term for an experience that a lot of people have, but that isn't often really respected or understood, even including by other ace people and by allosexual people. And actually, coincidentally enough, this room that I'm working on right now, this little octagonal room in the tower, the sim that I created it for is demisexual herself. So yeah, this is Layla's room. She's a writer, she's a demisexual lesbian, and she's not a vampire, but she always could become one. And in my mind, the stories she writes maybe are about vampires. She writes spooky short stories and stuff. But I think this room turned out really cute. I ended up using a lot of whites and grays, which I thought was cool because in the demisexual flag, there's a little bit more white and gray and less purple. And so the room ended up being like that. And I thought it was just really pretty and nice, and gave her the nice canopy bed as well. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about Layla in the video that I have coming up, introducing you to all of the Sims that I built to live in this house. So now we're moving on to Kiara's room, and Kiara actually is a vampire, and she's also an aro ace trans woman. So she's aromantic and asexual, and she's also trans. And her room was really fun to make. So one of her traits is the geek trait, which the main thing that does in the game is it means that they like video games. So I wanted to make sure Kiara had somewhere in her room to play video games. So I made a nice area for her bed, and then at the end of the bed there's a couch and then a whole gaming station. I used some of the new modular furniture to make an entertainment section where she could put her video game consoles and stereo and surrounding the TV, and she also has some bookshelves for maybe her comic books or stuff like that. And I put up little decorations of void critters around because I thought maybe she's into the void critter games. I like the geek trait. It is kind of simplified in the game because it mostly just means they like video games. But I thought that was cool, and so I tried to give her a little bit, some geeky things in her room to do. And funnily enough, this ends up actually being the only TV in the house. So if anyone wants to come watch TV, I guess they come to Kiara's room, because it didn't really fit in the living room, and I thought about putting a TV up on the third room, there was a little space, but I didn't think it fit, and it is a Victorian house. They probably wouldn't have had a big TV anywhere, but of course Kiara wants to have one in her room, so she can play video games, and she is a vampire, so maybe she's been living in this house for a long time and, discovered video games and was well, of course I have to have a whole gaming station set up in my room so I can play. So while I'm working on that, I want to tell you about my next ace YouTuber recommendation. So up next I have the channel Queer as Cat, which is the channel of Vesper, who is a black, non-binary, asexual vlogger, who has really made some really interesting videos about asexuality and how it intersects with various different things. They've also talked about asexuality after taking testosterone and what has changed and what hasn't. And they used to live in Japan, so they made several interesting videos about asexuality in Japan, or what it's like being black or non-binary in Japan. And those are really interesting to watch. And so Vesper hasn't made as many videos recently, but the whole back catalog honestly is really good, and I really recommend that you go and watch some of those. There's just a lot of really good stuff about asexuality especially, and about their experiences being asexual, and I've learned a lot from them, and their videos have helped me understand myself better. So yeah, even though there aren't a ton of new videos recently, there's still a lot of really good ones you can go back and watch. I probably will also mention Vesper in my video when I recommend non-binary YouTubers, because I think they're really cool, and also they coined the term maverick to describe a non-binary gender that is not, it can't be described in relation to man and woman, but it is a separate internal sense of gender that still exists. And I think that's really cool that they coined that term maverick to describe a particular type of non-binary identity. And now this room that I've been building with the single purple bed is for Damien. So Damien is asexual. I'm not really sure about like the other parts of his identity yet. I think maybe that Damien himself is kind of questioning and unsure, but Damien knows that he is asexual, and he's just not really that interested in relationships. Like, he doesn't necessarily have anything against them, but he's not really pursuing it, and he likes sort of to be unattached. Maybe he's more like solo, polyamorous or something like that if he does enter into relationships, because he doesn't really want to like commit to just like one person or anything. But he likes being independent. And his aspiration is to become a master mixologist. So he's really interested in like mixing drinks, and he has a job as a mixologist, and he also likes cooking. So he's not a vampire either. And I was thinking, maybe the reason Damien doesn't want to become a vampire is because like he loves making drinks, he loves cooking and drinking and eating, and vampires can't really do that. I think you can get like a trait that allows you to eat and drink human food, but yeah, vampires in the game can't really eat and drink the way that other Sims can. So maybe that's why Damien has decided he doesn't really want to be a vampire, even though, he has 2 roommates that could possibly turn him into a vampire, but he's like, still figuring himself out, seeing what he wants to do in life. So yeah, Damien's just, hanging out with his friends and, making drinks and just taking life one day at a time, and maybe he'll figure out himself and maybe he won't, but, things are going pretty well. Okay, so moving on to my next Ace YouTuber recommendation. Up next, I have Echo Gillette. So Echo is really cool. She's Ace. She is an artist, so a lot of the stuff on her YouTube channel is art. But recently, she actually moved into the forest. So I've really been enjoying those videos she's posted in the last couple of weeks about moving out into the forest and building a house there, making a garden. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend checking out her channel. I was also watching a video recently where Echo was talking about the fact that she was in an episode of BoJack Horseman, which I haven't watched, but I have heard good things about it, and especially about like its asexual representation. So I think that's really cool that like Echo apparently got to voice an asexual character in BoJack Horseman, which that's pretty awesome. But yeah, she has some really interesting videos about asexuality and lots of other things, like I said. And if you want to follow her on her journey, to making a house out in the forest on like some land that her family has and building lots of cool stuff, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. Oh, and I was just reminded of this really great video that Echo made about 2 years ago with Chandler Wilson and Aaron Ann Sweeney. So about being asexual and what asexuals think about like sex positivity. It's a really great video. I recommend you watch that. And I had been planning to mention as the next Ace YouTuber that I was going to recommend to talk about Aaron Ann Sweeney. But I actually had forgotten that Chandler Wilson is also on the ace spectrum. So Chandler is demisexual, and Echo in this video talks about how she's like pan gray ace. So yeah, definitely recommend Chandler as well, and I'll also link their channel. I'm planning to talk about Chandler in probably the video on being agender, because I don't know of that many agender YouTubers, and Chandler has definitely talked about that in the past. So yeah, moving on to Aaron Ann Sweeney. Aaron also does a lot of art on his channel. He's a disabled, asexual trans man, also non-binary. So yeah, definitely head over to Aaron Ann Sweeney's channel as well for lots of cool art stuff, talking about like trans stuff and being asexual and lots of disability issues. He did a really cool video where he like painted on his girlfriend's back as sort of a way to have intimacy, being asexual and not like really into sex, but having other ways to have that intimacy and showing off that art. And I thought it was really beautiful. And I like that. I like having, different ways to connect. And I think, sometimes people assume that like asexuality is very like black and white. Like if you're asexual, you just don't like sex and you don't ever have sex. But that's really not true. Like asexuality just means that you don't experience sexual attraction towards other people, but that doesn't mean you never want sex or have sex or, do sexual things with people. There's a lot of different ways that asexual people deal with that and approach that. And so I think it's really cool to see like different ace people talking about their different experiences and what they like to do to have that connection with partners and how they navigate those things with partners and just in life in general. So yeah, I think I will also link that video on Echo's channel with all three of them because I think it's a really good conversation. It's always really nice to have like lots of different asexual people together talking about their experiences because, like I said, there are a lot of different experiences. It's not one size fits all, and I think sometimes people get confused and don't understand that there are a lot of different ways that people experience asexuality, and it is a spectrum. There are different identities on that spectrum as well. So that is all of the asexual YouTuber recommendations I have for today. But if you have any recommendations, if you have asexual YouTubers or aspectrum YouTubers that you really like watching and you find interesting and informative, please feel free to leave a comment down below. If you are an ace YouTuber, I'd love to hear about that. Or just talk about your experiences with asexuality and being asexual because while I think it's gaining more visibility and understanding, there still just isn't that much information out there about being asexual, and yeah, I would love to have more ace YouTubers to watch. Now, this last bedroom that I'm decorating belongs to Nova. So Nova is a gender fluid gray ace vampire, and they're sort of more of a loner vampire than Kiara is. That's why I gave them the bedroom up on the top floor alone, because I thought they might like to have a little more privacy. And I gave them some nice bookshelves because they're sort of like a nerd vampire, I guess. They like learning about things and they want to study and become like a master vampire and like learning about vampire lore and stuff. So they just, want to become powerful and improve their vampire skills. But they do still care about their friends and roommates and stuff. They just prefer to have a little bit of a space and time where they can be alone and just spend time studying and relaxing. And I made sure to, put some nice curtains on their windows so they don't have to worry about all the light coming in during the day when they're trying to hide from the sun. You might notice throughout this build that there's a few times where I go into live mode and change the colors of the lights in the house, like both the lighting, the normal lighting and the candles. And it's kind of annoying that you have to go into live mode to do it, but I did that because, in a build like this where the colors are so important, and I do want to get the colors of the asexual pride flag. A lot of the lights, their default is very yellowish, and that really doesn't work for this color scheme. So I went in and I made all of the lights sort of a little bit more white light, and then the candles, I left them a little bit of a yellowish tint, but not nearly as much. And it really did help with the colors of the house and sort of making this color scheme look better. And one of the colors in the ace pride flag is white, so having that bit of white light did help. And I think that the color schemes and the color palette really turned out well. I was able to use mostly things that fit in one of those four colors: gray, black, white, and purple. And yeah, I think it did turn out really well. I'm glad I did a Victorian house for this one because I think that this color scheme really fits with that style of house, and it was fun to build. So for future flags, I'm not really sure, what exactly styles of houses I'm planning to do for each one. So if you have any suggestions of what you think different, flags, what type of house they might look good as, feel free to leave a comment. I would love to hear your suggestions and ideas because, I don't have as good of an idea for some of them as I did for this ace Victorian house. I hope that you've enjoyed this build and this video and this series. If you're not already subscribed and you want to catch either future videos about the Sims that I've created to live in this house or future pride flag inspired builds, make sure to subscribe so that you can see those videos when they come out. I will put my gallery ID in the description as well, so that if you want to download this house or anything else I've made, you can go and do that. My gallery ID is rainingEmbers.